Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're well. Today is Wednesday, and it is the 5th of March. We're getting ready for Parshas Tetzaveh, and it's also going to be Shabbos Parshas Zachor this week. So what I'd like to do is share with you some Divrei Torah that are going to be on Tetzaveh, and then at the end, I'd like to also share with you a Divrei Torah for Parshas Zachor, which is going to take us into the Purim season. So let's jump right in. We start on page 1, and we're going to see that in Parshas Tetzaveh, Moshe is told that his brother Aharon has been chosen to serve as the Kohen Gadol. So let's see the pasuk. The pasuk, we're on the top of page 1. So it's in Perach Chaf Ches, that's chapter 28, verse 1, pasuk Aleph. Ve'ata hakreve lachas Aharon achicha. And now Hashem tells Moshe, you should bring near, you should draw near your brother Aaron, Vespanav ito, and also his sons, mitoch b'nei Yisrael. And I want you to, here's the handout over here if you'd like. He says, I want you to draw close to you your brother Aaron and also his sons, mitoch b'nei Yisrael, from amidst the Jewish people, lechachano li, to serve as Kohanim. Then it says, Aaron, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, Samar. Remember, at this point, Aaron has 4 sons. There's Aaron, the father, and then his 4 sons, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Yitzhamar, Bnei Aaron. So they've been chosen. So that's the pasuk that introduces us, and then we're going to go on and to read in the psukim what the initiation process, the ceremony looked like. Let's take a look at a beautiful comment that I saw this week from Rabbi Shlomo Margolis in his Sefer Darchei Hashlemus. Again, we've quoted Rabbi Margolis in the past year or so. He was a student of the great Navardic yeshivas in Lithuania and Russia and Poland, and he came to America before the Holocaust. He was a rabbi in Boston for many, many years. So in his Sefer on Chumash, he has a beautiful short observation, and that's what we want to share this morning. So the observation can be found right there on page 1. We see there that he says, he's going on our pasuk. The pasuk says that Hashem told Moshe, I want you to draw close your brother Aaron and his sons and take them mitoch b'nei Yisrael. Take them out from amidst the Jewish people. So Rav Margolis says, Lechora Sefer Dekra, the end of this pasuk, where it says mitoch b'nei Yisrael, I want you to draw them near from the midst of b'nei Yisrael, from the midst of the Jewish people. Ein lo muvan b'tzorach. Those words seem to be extra. They seem to be extraneous. You don't really need them. So he says, because look at it, the pasuk would have the same meaning if it just said, "Vata hakreve leches Aaron achicha v'espanav." Ito, I want you to draw forth your brother Aaron and his sons, and then it goes on to list them by name. What's with these words? Mitoch b'nei Yisrael. Draw them forth from amidst the Jewish people. Well, where do you think they are? They're not, on vacation, somewhere. They're not in Miami now. They're mitoch b'nei Yisrael. They're with the Jewish people. Why are those words there? They seem to be extra. So he says as follows on the second line: Ve'efshar lomar. He says, here's a suggestion that he has. Shehasiba shenivchar Aaron. Hashem is telling Moshe the very reason. What is the reason why Aaron was chosen for this role? He ach v'rak is entirely because mipnei shaya betoch b'nei Yisrael. Aaron, so to say, saw himself as a man of the people. He was within the Jewish people. He never saw himself as a holier than thou kind of person. He was a man of the people. He was within Am Yisrael. He didn't hold himself outside of them. To the contrary, I'm just one of the crowd. There's nothing special about me. We've all met people in life who walk around thinking that there's something special, and we're turned off by them. But we've also met people in life who are humble people. They don't feel that there's any reason why they deserve any more attention than anyone else. And that's what Hashem's telling Moshe. I want you to take Aaron, mitoch b'nei Israel. I want you to take him because who is Aaron? Look how beautiful he is. He just sees himself as being a standard member of Klal Yisrael. He's just one of the crowd. He didn't see himself as having anything that made him in a position of advantage advantage or privilege over any of the other members of Klal Yisrael. And it was because of such anivus, of such humility and such humbleness that Aaron has. That's why he really deserved being put into this lofty position. So that's what Rabbi Margolis is suggesting, why the pasuk emphasizes mitoch b'nei Yisrael. Now, when I saw this, I immediately thought of a dictum that I know I once looked this up before, and I was really surprised. There's an expression that comes up very often. You'll see it in Jewish sources that goes something along the lines of "Habarech achar hakavod." If someone chases after kavod, hakavod barachas mimenu. The kavod runs away from him, and the contrast would be kol habarech min hakavod. If someone tries to run away from kavod, kavod runs after him. Problem is, this is not in a Mishnah, it's not a Gemara, it's nowhere. So you look it up, where does this come from? And it's based on something that's in a Gemara, but that expression itself is what it's kind of a folk saying, but it's not a saying. It's not in Pirkei Avos. It's not. But many of us would think, oh, that must be a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It's so commonly used. So when I did a Google search the other day, I wanted to see, okay, so where does that come from again? I came upon this beautiful short little article in Hebrew. We're going to read it together, and you'll see that he says what the origins of that expressions are. But it fits so well with this idea that Rabbi Margolis says. So this was in a sefer. This was on a website. There's an organization called Dirshu that runs different Torah learning initiatives, and this was on their website, and it was like basically a quick vort. But they quote from a sefer called Yechi Reuven. I tried to look it up in the original. The problem is, on the online database that I have, there are so many svarim by the name of Yechi Reuven, it didn't give us an author's name, so I didn't have time to go through them all. It didn't narrow it down. But I'm going to take his word for it because he's quoting it. Let's see what he says. The name of this article is called Ketzad Hochiach HaChafetz Chaim Bachur Sheradaf Achar Kavod. How did the great saintly Chafetz Chaim, how did he gently rebuke one of his students who he felt was a rodef achar kavod, was kind of pursuing honor. Now, again, the Chafetz Chaim was this giant saint of a man, so if he's going to rebuke someone, it's obviously going to be. And if he would, it would be in a very delicate, loving manner. So let's see what is this in this little article here. So he says it's called Daka Metuka, which means like a minute of sweetness. Al Daf Hayomi Imarav Avram Fuchs. So I don't know who this Rabbi Avram Fuchs is. So it was in Maseches Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Gimel. That was the Daf of the Gemara that this was tied to. Let's see what he says. Be Yeshiva Radin, and the Yeshiva Radin, that was the Chafetz Chaim's yeshiva. Hayabachur, there happened to have been at some point, there was one of the students. That it happens to all of us. We all struggle at some point in life. Want to go. We're glory hounds at some point. So there was one student who seemed to be having some kind of issue with felt he wasn't getting the cover that he deserved. Marana Chafetz Chaim Zatzal Ratzal Lamido Al Derech HaYashar. And the Chafetz Chaim wanted to help this kid get over this problem and set him straight. So at one time he summoned him to his room, V'amarlo, and he said to him as follows, and he wrote, I want to ask you a question. HaGemara Omeres, the Gemara in Eruvin tells us, Kol HaMechazer al HaGedula, anyone who pursues greatness, Gedula Barachas Mimenu, greatness runs away from him. This is what it's all based on. This is the line of the Gemara. Kol HaMechazer al HaGedula, someone who tries to actively is trying to achieve greatness and honor. Gedula barachas meimanu. It's elusive. It's going to run away from them. Al Pizet, based on this line of the Gemara, Yedua Maimer B'fi Abrios. That's where the folk saying comes from. And again, this was the one that I always assumed as a kid was in Pirkei Avos somewhere. But you go through Pirkei Avos, it's not there. Kol harodef achar hakavod. If someone tries to pursue kavod honor, hakavod barech mimenu. Kavod runs away from them. So the Chafetz Chaim says, "We are familiar with this, right?" And the kid says, "Yes." So he says, "Amor Nali." He says, "Please tell me, Mazu Ahadgasha Zos Kol." We're in this folk saying, or even in the Gemara, because the Gemara says, "Kol Hamachzer Achar Gedula." Anyone who tries to pursue, what's Kol? What does that mean? What's that emphasis on the word Kol? Hello, Dayo Yolomar. The Gemara could have just said, "Habareach min hakavod." If someone tries to run after kavod, it's going to run away from them. If someone tries to be rodef achar kavod, it's going to. What's with this kol? What does kol seem to emphasize? So Talmud lo yada lanos. The student didn't know what to answer, but obviously the Chavetz Chaim has an answer. Vimtin lamotze piv shel hakohen hagadol meradin. So he waited to hear what was the answer of the Kohen Gadol. It's a euphemism. The Chavetz Chaim was a Kohen, so he was a lofty high priest. So he says he wanted to hear what did the Chavetz Chaim, what was his answer? Why did it say kol? Amar lo Chavetz Chaim. So the Chavetz Chaim says from kol. Why was the word kol used? Bal rabos. It's coming to include Gam Keila, even those Shebemis Yesh Behem Milos Tovos, even those who have good deeds, Umagia Lehem Shiachabdu Asam, and they really do deserve to be honored. Lamashal, for example, Bachar Chashuv Kamocha, even someone with all the great attributes like yourself. Gam him, even them, Imhem Rodfim Achar Kavod, if they pursue kavod, lolam yol yasigo, so they're never going to attain it. Ki kechol sheyir defu acharav, anyone who runs after kavod, yibrach humehem, it's going to run away from them. So that's what Kol is saying. Anybody, even those who deserve it, even those who are as good as you, it's not going to work. It's just the way that God has programmed the world. Kola rodef achar kavod. Anybody who pursues kavod, no matter who they are, hakavod barech memenu. Kavod's going to run away from them. V'chein lahapach, and it works the opposite as well. Kola bareach min hakavod. Anyone who tries to escape being honored, hakavod mechazer acharav. Kavod's going to pursue them. Kol misha barech min hakavod, anybody who runs away from kavod, no matter who they are. Even someone who doesn't have any redeeming qualities. And this person doesn't even deserve kavod. At the end of the day, so kavod's going to attain them. Madua, why? Because after everything's said and done, such a person at least has one good thing going for them. They're running away from kavod. And because of this loftiness, hakavod yirdav acharav, kavod's going to pursue them. B'sofo shel davar hu yasigoso. And at the end, it'll catch up with them and they'll get it. So this was the way the Chavetz Chaim was gently trying to set this young man was straight. Was saying, let's remember this expression and kol. Why does it say kol? Everyone, even those who really deserve it, who have some really good character traits, just like someone like you who's got some really good character traits, if they're pursuing it, they're never going to get it. But the opposite, the other side of the coin is kol haboreach min hakavod. Anyone who runs away from kavod, anybody, even if they really don't have redeeming qualities, it's eventually going to catch them. So he seems to be saying, so kol shekain, certainly someone like you. And this is what Rabbi Margolis was saying about Aaron. Maybe that's why it said betoch b'nei Yisrael, that mitoch b'nei Yisrael, that when he tells Moshe that it's time to appoint Aaron as a Kohen Gadol, mitoch b'nei Yisrael. Why? Because Aaron's a berech min hakavod. He's running away from kavod. He doesn't want it. He doesn't hold himself as being higher and loftier than any other member of Am Yisrael. That's why specifically he was chosen. It's reinforcing this idea. I thought that's a very nice statement there. All right, let's see the second point. I want to talk about the Ketores. We're going to see there's this idea of the Ketores, and I think this is fascinating. The Ketores was that incense that was burnt every single day in the Beis Hamikdash, first in the Mishkan. It was burnt on the golden Mizbeach, the Mizbeach HaZahav, and we're going to see it introduced in this week's Parsha. I want to share some good sources on the Ketores with you. So the Parsha says it's in Perach Lamed, so it's chapter 30. So we're going to see three psukim. Aleph, then we're going to skip to Zayin and Ches. So 1, 7, and 8. Aleph, Vasisa Mizbeach Miktar Ketores. I want you to make a golden altar, which is going to be used for bringing Ketores, this incense. Atzei Shitim Tasoso. It's really going to be made from that Shitim wood, and it'll be overlaid with gold. Let's jump to Zayin and Ches, 7 and 8. V'iktir alav Aaron Ketores Samim. And every single day, Aaron is going to burn on it these spices, this ketores, this incense of mixed together spices, baboker, every single morning, be'tivos aneros yaktirano. When he's also taking care of the menorah lamp, that's when he's also going to be lighting the incense every single morning. And again, it didn't have to be Aaron. Aaron was a Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol had first rights, but it could be it wasn't limited to him. It's because this was in the Kodesh section, the holy section, not in the Holy of Holies, where the Aaron was, which even Aaron would only go in there on Yom Kippur. So this wasn't that. This was, he says Aaron, meaning the Kohen. That's the one who's going to take care of this. But again, it was whatever Kohen was on duty. Ches, one more pasuk. Valos Aaron es haneros ben arbaim. And when Aaron would, in other words, in the morning, that's when he'd go to clean up the menorah and set up new wicks and everything, but he would light it in the afternoon. So in the morning, he would go in and he would light the Ketores too, while he's servicing the menorah. When he goes to actually light them in the afternoon, Yaktirana, he's going to also light Ketores again. So it seems Ketores was lit twice a day. Tamid lifnei Hashem l'dor sechem. So it was going to, he would make it go up and smoke in the afternoon as well. So it seems like in the morning when he went to service the menorah, that's when he lit it. And again, in the afternoon when he went to light the menorah, he also would light the Ketores. Okay. Now, as anything in the Torah, if I ask why, the real answer is because Hashem says that's the way it ought to be. Unless the Torah itself gives us a reason, we can't say with authority we know the reason. It's what Hashem asked of us. But Sfarim, what you'll find is there's works out there that come up with theories that based on our Torah learning, what might be at the root of this. We always refer to this as Ta'amei HaMitzvos, perhaps some of the reasons behind the mitzvos. The one sefer that's perhaps most famous for this is called the Sefer HaChinuch. The whole idea of the Sefer HaChinuch was to supply reasons and rationales behind the mitzvos, but they're theories. Again, you can't say with certainty. But who preceded the Sefer HaChinuch was the great Rambam, Maimonides. And we're familiar that Rambam wrote a work of philosophy called Moreh Nevuchim. I'm not a philosopher, and I cannot say that I've studied Moreh Nevuchim. However, the third section in Moreh Nevuchim is pretty much a Sefer HaChinuch, where the Rambam goes through many, many of the mitzvahs in the Torah and offers what does he think the rationale is behind that. What might his theory, what might have God wanted out of this mitzvah? Very often the Sefer HaChinuch will adopt that and go with that. And sometimes, like we're going to see here by Ketores, he does something a little bit different. But very often, the Sefer HaChinuch is basically just repeating or building on what Rambam did in the third section of Moreh Nevuchim. So, but what we're going to see this morning when it comes to Ketores, or this afternoon rather, when it comes to Ketores, we're going to see that Rambam has one theory about what the purpose of Ketores was, and we're going to see that the the Sefer HaChinuch, it's not clear if he's arguing or if he's building on it. Let's see. So this is in Moreh Nevuchim in the third section. That's what I say, Gimel there. It's the third section. Mem Hey, section 45. So let's see what the Rambam says. We're on the bottom of page 2. V'ka'asher hayu shochatim b'makom hamikudash behemos rabos b'chol yom. What was going on in the Beis Hamikdash? There was karbanos being brought all day long in there. So in a certain sense, it was a slaughterhouse. He says, if you think about that, there was livestock coming through the Beis Hamikdash, and they were being slaughtered all day long. And then they would cut it up. They would quarter those animals. The sarfen, and much of it would be burned. They'd be washing out the guts, the internal organs of these animals. Ain't suffix, there is no doubt. If you would just let the matter be, and the sun's beating down on it, if you would take no precautions, it would smell like a slaughterhouse. If anyone's ever visited a slaughterhouse, there's a smell to it. Between, any place where you've got animals and livestock, there's going to be a smell. And now once you start shechting them and there's an odor there. And even though it's open air, there's going to be an odor. Because of this, Hashem doesn't want anybody to have any kind of revulsion about the Beis Hamikdash. He wants our experience in the Beis Hamikdash to be a lofty, sublime experience. So how are we going to counteract that it doesn't smell like a Schlachthaus, like a slaughterhouse? What are we going to do? Ketores, it's going to have this beautiful, it's like, you think about Febreze. It's the best form of Febreze that's out there. He says, so it's a very practical reason Rambam's given. And it should be done twice a day, every single day. First in the morning when the menorah is being serviced, and then in the afternoon when it's being lit. And the purpose of Ketores is to improve the smell. of the overall Beis Hamikdash, but more than that, v'reach bigdei kol ha'oved, and also the clothing of anyone who's serving there. Because think about it, the Kohanim are dealing with these big, sweaty behemoth animals, and it's not just that the environment's going to smell bad; their clothes are going to stink. So this way, by having ketoras being burnt twice a day, that's going to counteract all the foul odor. Kfar Yadata Amram, and everyone knows, we're going to see this soon. This was a Gemara that says this. It's a beautiful play on words. Miricho, from in the city of Jericho, from Yericho, Hayu Merichen Reach HaKetoras. You see, Reach means smell. So in Yericho, even they were able to smell the smell of the Ketoras. That's how potent it was. It was such an awesome mixture of spices that they could smell it in Yericho. Now, Yericho is miles away. And if the scent of the Ketoras is making it to Yericho, you can just imagine how powerful that scent was to transform the whole aura of the Beis Hamikdash. So that's Rambam's theory here. And not only does this improve the smell, but it also makes it that anybody who visits the Beis Hamikdash will have a greater awe of the place. If we did not have this fine smelling ketoras, and certainly if there's a foul odor, which would happen if you had all these animals and all the slaughtering and everything going on, it would not be an inspiring experience. To the contrary, it would be a very degrading experience to visit there. The way of the human being is, we can reach sublime levels when we smell beautiful smelling things. And I'll turn to it. That's where I want to be. Min reach hara. And human nature is we turn away from foul odors. And we run away from that. So he's saying that Rambam's saying that's his theory about Ketoras. The whole story of Ketoras was to improve, because naturally there would have been a very foul odor in the Beis Hamikdash, and Ketoras was this overpowering, beautiful odor. And what that does is it counteracts anything negative, not just in the Avirah, in the atmosphere of the Beis Hamikdash, but in the clothing of the Kohanim, who are there working all day long. Everyone's going to smell good, and this will make a sublime experience, and people are going to want to be there, and they'll have a positive experience. Whereas if it was a foul stench, not just will they not want to be there in the first place, when they are there, it's going to be something they never want to come back to. It's not going to be anything that someone wants to have to do it. So Rambam gives us a very practical reason, as you can see, about Ketoras. Let's see what the Sefer HaChinuch does. We're on page 3 now. And the Sefer HaChinuch, we'll see, is he building on him or is he arguing? Let's see. Mitzvah Haktoras Ketoras. So he says mitzvah 103 in the Chinuch's way of counting things is the mitzvah of burning the Ketoras. Shenitztavu HaKohanim, that the Kohanim were commanded Laktir Ketoras Samim Pa'amayim B'chol Yom, to burn Ketoras twice a day. Al Mizbeach Hazav, on the golden Mizbeach. Shenemar, it says in Shemos in this week's Parsha, Victira Lava Aaron Ketoras Samim Baboker Betivo. They should every morning when he's servicing the menorah, that's one time to burn it, and then the next pasuk says that in the afternoon when they go to light it, they burn it again. He says, and this went on throughout the year. Every single year, they were commanded to burn Ketoras twice a day. What might be at the root of this mitzvah? What might be the theory behind it, the rationale behind it? So he says, we want everybody to have an awe of the Beis Hamikdash, and going there should be a really special experience. And there is no more powerful way, or there's no stronger way to create a set of circumstances where a person will have a positive experience and positive frame of mind, unless it's an enjoyable experience being somewhere. I'm not going to have a real sense of awe of a place. I'm not going to have a great longing for the place. It's not a place where I want to be. It's got to be a place where there's there's enjoyment and there's something happy there. It's well known there's nothing that makes a person happier than a smell that they enjoy. So the whole purpose, we want going to the Beis Hamikdash to be a positive experience. We want it to be an uplifting experience. And the greatest way to create that frame of mind is by having a good smell. Realtors will say that what do they advise people when there's a house showing to have an apple pie in the oven, just something like that. What?
They say that the strongest sense out of the five senses
Is the sense of smell.
No, we remember that.
Exactly. And it could jog the memory 100%. So what the Chinuch is saying is Hashem wants it, that the Beis Hamikdash is a place we long to be. And how do we make it into a place we long to be? If it's something that's enjoyable. And he says there's no way to make something more enjoyable than to have a wonderful, wonderful smell. That's what he says. There's nothing that draws a person closer than when there's a great, great smell. And the Ketoris was the nicest smell that human beings could come up with. The nicest potpourri. You go into the nice Bed Bath and Body Works shop that smells so good, all that stuff, that pales in comparison to what Ketoris was. Would knock our socks off how good that smelled. So everyone would want to be there, and it would make the Beis Hamikdash the premier destination. At Shomer Zachor LeBracha, and this is that Gemara from Maseches Tamid, Beperek Amar Lamamuna, Ki Meirecho, from the smell of the Ketoris, Hoya Merichin Bo, it could be smelled B'Shas HaKtorah, when they were burning it, mi Yericho ad Yerushalayim, for all the way to Yericho to Yerushalayim. So that whole distance, draw a radius, I guess, between Yericho and Yerushalayim, when they were burning the Ketoras, you could catch a whiff of it in that whole area. So now can you just imagine how concentrated and powerful it was in the Beis Hamikdash itself. So what the Chinuch does is, I think he built on the Rambam. You saw what he didn't do? He didn't tell us the other side of the coin. Rambam told us the other side of the coin that said, if we left it to its own features, we didn't put in this element of the Ketoras, there would be a pretty foul stench. Chinuch just ignored that. And so I think he's kind of building, I don't think he's arguing. I think he's emphasizing what the Rambam said. He's building up the Rambam, and what he's saying is that Hashem wants us to be in the Beis Hamikdash. He wants it that we desire to be there. So we're not going to desire to be there unless there's something really enjoyable. Our senses are just on fire. And of the senses, what's the sense that can make us most excited? Is the sense of smell. So Ketoras was in the list of ingredients that go into it, is that Hashem knew that as human beings, because he made us, he knows that human beings, this is the most potent combination of fragrant spices and odors that could be put together that would just make a person gaga. We'd just go nuts. We'd be so happy. Who wouldn't want to be in the Beis Hamikdash? That's what he's saying. So it's not so much that it's coming to counteract the stink, but rather just create an incredibly powerful experience. So I think that's what he's doing on this. Now again, Rambam did hint to this, but that's what he's. I think he's going beyond the Rambam here. Rambam was really saying the primary function was to counteract the stink, and you should know by having a really good smell, it'll get people happy. Chinuch just seems to be working with that, and so I wouldn't say they're arguing. It seems to me like what aspect of Rambam is he choosing to really dig in on, and that's what he is there. So now let's take a look at the Gemara. There's a very, very beautiful Gemara, Maseches Yoma, that has to do with Ketoras. And I think there's a lot we can learn from this. So the Gemara tells us in Maseches Yoma, it starts with a Mishnah. And the Mishnah in Yoma tells us that there were certain people in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash that will always be remembered for good, based on excellent innovations that they came up with, or ways that they benefited Am Yisrael. But it also says there are people that are always going to be remembered liganai. They're going to be remembered for things they did that were pretty despicable or pretty disgraceful, and they're never going to be able to live that down. So let's see. It says here Mishnah Masnisin. Here's a Mishnah of Elu Laganai. Here's an example of some of the people who were around in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, who will always be remembered for not such good things. For Laganai. Ganai is a way of saying, as opposed to being praised, we're basically for what's the opposite of praise? For disgrace, I guess. Yeah, they'll always be remembered in a little bit of shame here. It says, Ve'elu Ganai, what's an example? Shobes Garmu. There was a family of Kohanim that they were known as the Garmu family of Kohanim. Again, people didn't really have last names. There must have been some ancestor. His name was Garmu. So like the whole family of Kohanim was known as the Garmu family. The Garmu family of Kohanim. Why? Lo ratzu lelamed al maisa lechem apanim. So he says this Garmu family did not want to teach anybody else how to make the lechem apanim. It seems like the lechem apanim that went on the shulchan, it was a particularly there was a lot of craftsmanship involved because the way the bread was shaped and then how they had to get it out of the pan, not sticking to the pan. Apparently, there was a lot of craftsmanship involved, and they had the master technique, and they wouldn't share it with anybody else. They wanted to keep it in the family. You think about like everyone's got some relative who's got some killer recipe, and she won't share that recipe with anybody else. And if she does, she changes the ingredients just a little bit, so it'll never taste exactly the same way that she made it. So that's what it almost sounds like this base garmu is. Okay, that they were remembered in shame for that. And it sounds like it would have been better if more people knew this because now there's such scarcity that what would happen if, let's say, I don't know, that family would be off on vacation or some tragedy occurs, then Klal Yisrael will lose the art of making the lechem apanim. So they obviously had some really, really good technique and they wouldn't share it with anyone. And then also shall base Avtinas. There was another family of Kohanim, the Avtinas family, Lo Ratzal Lamed al Maisa Ketoris. They were the ones who had it seems like the perfect recipe of ketoris, and they don't want to share it with anyone. Now, what does that mean? Because if you look every day, every Shabbos at the end of davening, we say pituma ketoris after Ein Kelokenu, and there's a list of all the spices. So what did they have that was so different than everyone else? So either you could say, okay, we have the list, but we don't know the proportion. So maybe they had the proportion. But we're also going to see there was one ingredient that they had that nobody else was able to identify. Look, let's see what it was. The Gemara says, Shalbes Avtinas. The Avtinas family did not want to let anybody else in on the secret of how to make ketoras. Tan Rabban and the rabbis taught. Beis Avtinas how you bekin b'maisa ketoras. They were absolute experts. So it seems as if, again, I don't know why this is the only family of Kohanim. It must have been wider spread. And I guess at a certain point, all the people who were carrying the secret had either forgotten it, didn't pass it along. It was in the hands of one family of Kohanim. They did not want to teach anyone else. Sholchu chachamim. So the sages said this is not safe. It's not safe that just one family has a secret, and they're not willing to tell us what it is. So here's what we'll do: we'll take a sample of ketoras, and we'll send for the chemists in Alexandria of Egypt. So he says, Sholchu chachamim ve'aviu umnin me Alexandria. They sent for the chemists, the expert spice makers of Alexandria, Shal Mitzrayim, of Alexandria, Egypt. V'hayu yodin lefatem kemosam. He said, and they brought them to the Beis HaMikdash to smell ketoras, and they said, "You guys are such experts. Tell us." They won't tell us how to make it. So draw your own recipe. This is almost like someone tasting Coca-Cola and coming up with a generic that could taste exactly like it. So that's what the Chacham did because they're not willing to share it, and we don't think it's safe for Am Yisrael that there's just one family who's got the secret of ketoras. So they brought in these experts from Egypt. And they said they were able to do it. They were able to get it that it smells the same. However, there was one difference. They couldn't get the smoke to rise perfectly. It seems like the Beis Avtinas, not only did they have the perfect ratio of ingredients to get this beautiful smell of ketoras, but they also knew there was one secret ingredient that they had that would make the cloud of smoke go up perfectly straight. Airborne. It wouldn't just dissipate all over. There was the visual effect that it went straight up. That was something that these experts from Egypt, they could not duplicate that. Shel halalu mitamer va'ola kemakal. When the Beis Avtinas did it, it went straight up like a rod. Shel halalu, but when the Egyptian spice makers did it, it may have smelled the same, but shel halalu maftzia lakan lakan. It dissipated all over. It didn't have that striking visual effect. When the sages heard about this, that we can't get it, and the Avtinas family won't give us that secret, Amru, they said, everything that God created, He created for His honor. Shenemar, because it says, so they returned. It seems like they said, look, we were frustrated with them. We brought in these Egyptians. They still can't match it. We're as frustrated as we are. Avtina's family, keep doing your thing. We basically they won the arm wrestle match. The Chacham said we can't. We thought we could replace you. We can't. Finally, a little further. Amru lahem chachamim. So the chachamim finally say to Sabtina's family, "Why are you so stubborn?" Amru lahem chachamim, marisam shalol lamed. Why won't you share your recipe? Why won't you share the trade secret? Amru, they responded, Yodin hayu shalbeis Abba. We have a long tradition going back to our patriarch. That this second base of Mikdash is eventually going to be destroyed because of the sins of Am Yisrael. Amru, and they said, Shema Yilmod Adam She'ena Mohugan. We're nervous that we're going to teach someone how to make our ketores, and this is a person who's not loyal. And they'll take this art, they'll take this skill, and they'll bring it to some temple of idolatry. So to make sure that never happens, that ketores will never have that chutzpah of being profaning the ketores, that the same recipe would be used in a house of idol worship. We're keeping it just in the family. This way, if we keep the trade secret close to the chest, we'll make sure that when the Beis Hamikdash is eventually destroyed, it never falls into enemy hands. It's never profaned by being used in a temple of idol worship. So he says, "Ve'al davar zeh mazkirno sol hashevach." So now the Gemara concludes, but you should know there's one thing, even though the Chachamim were so upset with the Sabtina's family because they never divulged the trade secret, there's one thing they found about them that they said, we're going to always praise you for. What was that? Me'olam lo yatsa kala mevusemes mibetein. Whenever a girl from their family would get married, or one of their sons would marry a girl, that kala, even though it was her wedding day, she never wore perfume. No girls from the Avtina's family ever went out perfumed. Now you got to remember, in an ancient world where hygiene's not the same as it is today, we didn't have soap, we didn't have deodorant. Perfume played a big role because perfume helped mask all those odors that would exist if a person didn't have modern hygiene. So he says, what was the one thing they praised that family for? As stubborn as they were, that they would never surrender the trade secrets, they praised them for this. No girls in their family, even on their wedding day, wore perfume. And when if let's say one of their sons would marry a girl from a different family, they would make the condition with her that on her wedding she's not allowed to wear perfume. Nobody is allowed to wear perfume in this family at the wedding day, which was a big deal because people want to be as beautiful and smell as nice as they can. Why? Shelo Yomru, we want to make sure nobody ever says Mimaisa HaKatoras Misbasmen. That you know why they smell so good? That Avtina's family that's keeping the trade secrets so close to the chest, they must have rigged up some special perfume for that kala that it's made from Ketorah stuff. And we want to make it clear that we protect those trade secrets and they got one purpose and one purpose only. They're being used for Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash. That was what the Avtina's family said. L'kayim Hashanemar, and by doing this, they wanted to fulfill that which the pasuk says, "V'yisem nikim Hashem Yisrael," that we got to always be clean. Nobody should ever think ill of us. So here it is, this beautiful piece of history here, that the Ketores, what we saw this week's Parsha is going to tell us about the Ketores. And we saw that the Rambam says there was a very practical reason behind the Ketores, because it was to offset the stench that would have existed in the Beis HaMikdash. And then we saw the Chinuch said, not even focusing on that so much, but we want to provide this beautiful set because that'll draw people close. We want people to be drawn close. And then we saw this Gemara that tells us about the Avtina's family, that they held this secret so close that they wouldn't divulge the secret. How do you make the ketores? Not just the ratio and the spices, but how do you make it so that the cloud of smoke goes straight up? They would never give that away. And as upset as Chazal were with them, that they list them as leganai. These are the ones who are going to always wear a badge of shame. They said, you know what? If there's something they did right, we're still going to praise them for them. And what was that? That their kalas, all of the weddings that ever took place in Avtina's family, the kalas never wore perfume. The brides never wore perfume because they wanted to make sure no one ever accuses us of taking ketores for ourselves. You know, so I thought what's so beautiful about that is that here's this family that they're going to always wear a badge of shame because they wouldn't share. But despite that, that didn't mean they would just, let's write them off. When there's something good to praise about them, they do something right, we're gonna let them know. How many of us do that? When we decide somebody is, we just dismiss them all. We'll never see something good in them. Here it is, Chazal. There was plenty. They were upset at the Sabtina's family, but when they saw something righteous, we're gonna recognize that.
Didn't they go back to that family and only use that family again?
Yeah, but it sounds like they were always felt like you have us over the barrel. They were always mentioned L'ganai. They never felt that what they did was the right thing. But at the same token, and they go down in history in the Mishnahs, Elul Ganai, that Avtina's family who wouldn't share with us. We thought they should have. And they're always going to wear that badge of shame. But you know what? When they do something good, we're going to recognize it.
They say that they tried different recipes.
Yeah, but that family should have given it over on our authority. We're Chazal. We're telling, who are you, Kohanim, to override us? That's like the Supreme Court saying, you're firmer than us. We're saying you should divulge a secret. No, because we don't want it ending up in Avodah Zarah. Okay, but that's a nice idea. But we're Chazal, we're the Sanhedrin. We're saying you should divulge the secret. We're not going to do it. So it's Elul Ganai. They said they're going to always be shamed for that because they didn't listen to Chazal. But at the same token, they did something right. We're going to let them know about it. And I think that's very interesting because I think our gut reaction is when we decide someone is off the rocker, they're done. We're never going to notice anything good in them anymore. But here it's saying, even though someone's off the rocker, still they did something good. We're going to point to, we're going to say about it. One thing I just wanted to show you is I saw on the Rabbi Steinsaltz site, he's got a theory about what type of brush or herb it was that Mala Ashan. I don't know how to pronounce it in its Latin. It's called Leptidinia pyrotechnica. So pyrotechnica obviously means something with flames, like pyrotechnics is always how we say about fireworks. So this is some shrub or herb that's native to the Jordan Valley in northern Sinai, and it says that the plant ignites very easily, and local Arabs have used it to make gunpowder and explosives. Lighting even one branch in a bush will cause it to burn up entirely in a very short amount of time, with flames reaching as high as 10 meters. So apparently this bush is like, God's gift to pyromaniacs out there. So he's got a theory, and there's others who have a theory. Maybe this was the Ma'ale Ashan. Maybe this is what's referred to as that ingredient that could cause the smoke to go straight up. It's a theory. We don't know. Okay, I want to share with you one short thing on Parshas Zachor. This might go like 2 minutes extra. Are you okay if we go 2 minutes extra? Okay, so here we go. Parshas Zachor is going to be read on Shabbos, and it's going to be read from Parshas Kiseitze in Sefer Devarim. What I'm going to share with you now is where the attack is first recorded, which is in Parshas Beshalach. We read it a few weeks ago. So again, this is going to be read per morning. What you see here, Parshas Beshalach is read per morning. What's read on Shabbos Parshas Zachor is from Kiseitze and Devarim. So, however, you'll see the same idea can be applied to both. And it's just, this is where this commentary is written. So what does it say? Vayavo Amalek. Amalek came along, v'yilachem im Yisrael b'Refidim, and waged war with the Jewish people in Refidim. So one of the commentaries to the Chumash, we all know in the Mikras Kedolos, is called the Das Zekenim Balei Tosos. The Tosos, who have a running commentary on the Gemara, they also had a lot to teach us on the Chumash. So another source of what the Balei Tosos taught, aside what's in the Mikras Kedolos, is called the Moshav Zekenim, and that's here. Look what he does. This is beautiful. He says, "Vayavo Amalek v'yilachem im Yisrael b'Refidim." Amalek comes along and fights with the Jewish people in Refidim. Tema, he says, here's the question: Ma ra'a Amalek lilachem b'Yisrael acharei sheshama kol anisim shenasu liYisrael im Mitzrayim. What were they thinking? Amalek just heard about the plagues. They heard about the splitting of the sea. All of the mightiest empire in the world has just been brought to its knees. Are they stupid? Are they just glutton for punishment? What are they thinking, poking the bear? What do they really think they're going to win? What were they thinking? What possibly gave them this confidence to attack Klal Yisrael? That's the question of the Moshe Zakanim. The Balei Tosos are asking this question. V'yesh lomar, look at this theory. This is wild. Mipnei she'ayin b'shmo. Amalek took a look at its own name. Sheramuzim b'osyoseim. And they said, look what our name is a potent name. That's going to be on the right column. Sheramuzim b'osyosav. In the letters of our name, I underlined the first letter of, if you go down, of Amalek, you'll find Amram, who's the father of Moshe, that's Ayin. Umoshe, that's the Mem in Amalek. Levi, that's the Lamed. And Kuf is Kahas. Look at our name. We are such a powerful, we have the ability, Amalek, the way we're spelled, we have the ability to overcome Am Yisrael. Look what's in our name. V'al zeh batach, that's what gave them this confidence. V'ta, but they made a terrible mistake. Shesofe tevos, they were looking at the beginning of their name, Amalek. But look at what the end of the name Amalek is. Shesofe tevo shel hashemos, the end of their names, ha'ela, humisa. Because look how I set it up. If you, so to say, scramble the words, instead of listing it in order of Amram, Moshe, Levi, and Kas, listed as Amram. At the end, what's the last letter in Amram? Mem. Levi, what's the last letter in Levi? Is a Yud. Last letter in Kas is a Taf. Last letter in Moshe is a Hey. So what you thought, Amalek, if you're looking at the first letters, it could spell that. If you look at the last letters of those same words, it gets Misa. What does Misa mean? Death. So he says, Misa, Kishetikach mem me Amram. We take the mem from Amram, Yud me Levi, Taf from Kas, and Aleph, and the Hey rather from Moshe. That was their mistake. And this is what Bilam, that mercenary for hire, this is what Bilam said when he saw Amalek. He said, and that's the pasuk I've got on the bottom there. Rashis goyim Amalek. Literally, that means Amalek was the first nation to attack the Jewish people. So he's saying, he's darshaning it. What does it mean, Rashis goyim Amalek? Dainu rosh osyosav, who rosh, dainu shemos ha'elu tzadikim. Is Amalek, what was the root of their mistake? They only looked at the Rosh. They only looked at the beginning of those letters, of those holy people's names, and they found their name Amalek in it. But the pasuk goes on, V'achriso, but the end of Amalek is going to be Adea Oved, is going to lead to destruction. Dahainu, what does that mean? Sofe hatevos, humisa. That's Amalek. Amalek, so he's darshaning like this. Balak, or Bilam rather, who's that merciful, took a look at Amalek, and he says, Amalek, you know what your problem is? Amalek, you're a people that you get so caught up on just seeing what's in front of your eyes. You only see the rashis. You don't look at the achris. You don't try to think about there might be more to this picture. There might be something deeper. There might be something in the after part. You're only looking at the beginning, and that's going to lead to your downfall. And that's what led to it here. Amalek looks at it. All they see is the beginning, the opening letters, and they see Amram, Moshe, Levi, Kas. They don't look at those same words and see if you look at the end letters, you'll end up with Misa, which is what happens to Amalek. Ultimately, they're going to be destroyed. And I couldn't help but think as we get into the Purim season, and this is Parshas Zachor, what's so beautiful is that who goes to for Am Yisrael, who leads the war against Amalek? Who was he? Yoshua. Remember, Yoshua led the army. What tribe was Yoshua from? Ephraim. Ephraim is a son of Yosef. So in my mind, I'm kind of thinking that's the ultimate opposite. Who goes to war? If Amalek's whole problem is that they only look at the beginning, they don't look at the outcome, they don't look at later down the line, they only see what's right in front of their face. The ultimate, the opposite of that is Yosef. Yosef was tempted by the Ashes Potiphar. On the surface, everything's right there. He's just looking at, okay, moments of a momentary small amount of pleasure and hana. But what made Yosef resist? He had the wherewithal to look at the achris. Don't just look at the ratios. Don't just look at the moment, what's here right in front of me, but look at the big picture. How is this going to all end? And that's what allowed him to resist. He says, I'm not going to sin against God. And Yosef resisted. Yosef was someone who didn't just focus on the ratios. He focused on the achris. So that's the antithesis of Amalek. So I found this fascinating. Here's the Moshe of Zakanim saying what gave Amalek that false sense of bravado, gave them the gumption to attack Am Yisrael. They only looked at the beginning, and that's what Bilam was getting at. They only look at the rashis, not at the achris. Who was successful in vanquishing Amalek? Yoshua was coming from the Shevet of Yosef, from a descendant of Yosef, because that's the antithesis. Yosef was someone who didn't get caught up just looking at the ratios, what was right in front of him, was able to look at the bigger picture, the deeper picture, see the achris, and that's what allowed him to keep control of his yetzer, of his temptations. That's the antithesis of Amalek there. So I thought this is fascinating. As we're getting into the Purim season, here's another angle to look at Haman, that villain of the Megillas Esther is a descendant of Amalek. This is the downfall of their people. A people who only looks at the beginning, not at the end. That should encourage all of us when we go through life and we've got questionable situations. Before we just jump at what's right in front of our face, let's take a step back. Let's cool our heels. Let's analyze it. Let's make sure we're taking in the full picture. We're considering everything, not just what's right in front of us. Let's not fall into the trap of Amalek. I thought that's a very interesting thing there. All right, so we're gonna conclude now. If anyone has anything they'd like to contribute, please feel